First case is a rehearing. Case number 101-56-GR-21-ZBA only Matthew Castonagay. We all received the letter in our packet. Mr. Pagat, pronunciation. So with a rehearing, this basically is amongst the board ourselves to decide whether or not there's new evidence that's been presented or if we made an error in our decision process in the last meeting. So I personally didn't see anything new in the letter that was presented that was not presented at the last meeting. So, and I don't think we did anything out of order for that. So, Dave?
Yeah.
All right, then, do we hear a motion to rehear the case?
I'll make that motion.
Second it.
I'll second
Okay. Gerald Hawkins, how do you vote?
Vote yes, not to hear the case.
Not good. Dave?
it.
Not to rehear the case, and I vote not to rehear the case as well. Okay. Now move on to case number 122-22-GRSLWM-21 at variance by owners Stephen Lambert and Margot Clark. Present your case, please.
I just give it to me.
Sure.
Easy.
Yes.
All right.
Sorry, I had to print all that out.
Oh. It's just as big there.
So my name is Christopher Berry. I'm Berry Surveying and Engineering representing the applicants here this evening. The project is on Static Road, basically right at the entrance of Static Road.
Before you proceed, you know that you're going to need a unanimous decision on.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes. I would only ask that if the board feels that there's more information needed or revisions are needed, we can continue.
Great, sorry.
That's right. So generally, the project is very close to the entrance of Static Road and has water frontage on Swains Lake. And in my written presentation to you, describe the parcel. So Static Road is up here. Topographically, it's much higher than the lake elevation. There's an existing house that's on site. Currently, there's an unknown septic system drawn water from the lake. So it's actually year round, but it's not really to the standard of full-time living, if you know what I mean. Somebody could live there, but probably not in a great condition. And so this project is really twofold. I'll go through the entire project just so you get a full understanding of it. But we're really only here for one aspect of the project. The existing structure would be basically lifted, a foundation placed under the structure, and then the structure placed back down on that foundation. So the dimensions of the structure in relation to the boundary lines, the water, and the road would not change, and neither would any of the other attributing aspects of the house in its current state. So currently there's a deck and there are some stairs. When the project is done, those features would also remain. The applicants are looking to make this their full-time residence and move to Barrington full-time. And so they called upon us to provide for a sewage disposal design, as well as provide for some additional space for a proposed garage. Given the size of the lot, we originally looked at placing this garage much closer to the house. But because of the topography of the site, there'd be no way to actually enter the garage from the roadside without being literally 3 stories above the existing house, even when that's raised vertical feet. So that was their ultimate goal, was to provide for a garage that was affixed to their house. And just based on the topography of the site, we're unable to achieve that for them. Additionally, I would point out that the increased in impervious surface is probably much better suited further from the lake than closer to the lake and affixed to the house. And so then what we looked at was how to functionally build a garage here at the top of the slope. The existing site has a parking platform, which you can see here is sort of grayed out right at the front. And then as you can see in the existing conditions plan, the slope tears away quite quickly down to more of a plateau and then into the existing structure. Essentially, what we want to do is construct a concrete column in that steep slope area and then build a garage above that. So it's a little different style construction. Typically, a garage is slab on grade, but because we're filling that column, we would be filling that column. I think the applicants are proposing to basically pour what I call a bridge pan and then have a full foundation under that. So there'd be no increase in the square footage of the house, but they would have basically subterranean storage in a foundation under their new garage, and then they would have physical garage space. The two variances that we're requesting are front and side setback. This garage is proposed is just a very standard 24 by 24 two-car garage. It'll probably have a single door in the front, and will not have necessarily a story or two above that. So just a standard garage with the storage beneath. With respect to the front setback, we wanted to balance the site front to back. So we wanted to make sure that there was enough space between the front of the garage and the applicant's road right of way so that a car could park lengthwise in the driveway. And so that's why this is situated even as far back off from the road as it is. And then the reason that this isn't pushed even further off the road is this proposed septic system. We have to maintain a certain distance from the existing house. We have to maintain a certain distance from the proposed garage. And of course, we're trying to maintain as much distance as we can from the proposed septic system. The site will be serviced by the water service that's in Static Road. There's a water management system out there, so no proposed well would be installed on site. As you can see in the existing conditions plan, there's a retaining wall here, and there are some steeper slopes on the eastern side of the site. And so we're trying to favor the garage to that side slightly, so that when somebody leaves the garage to walk down to the house, we have much better topography to traverse the slope down to the front door, which is why we have tried to favor this, or we have tried to center it, but it is favored to the eastern side slightly for that reason. And then these grades would grade into the existing concrete retaining feature that's there now. And then, of course, the foundation that would be installed under the garage, we'd have grading that would go into that. As part of the project, we are proposing that this area be revegetated upon completion so that we can meet our buffering and tree points as required by the Shoreline Protection Act. The only other thing that this plan doesn't show is, as part of the Shoreline Protection Plan or Shoreline Protection plans that would be submitted to the state, we'll be proposing drip edge around the drip edges of the proposed house to offset even some of the existing impervious surface that exists there now. And then again, with the stormwater management around the proposed garage, we would propose both drip edges and then likely a small dry well in each corner so that we could capture the stormwater and get that back into the ground so that there's no detriment to the lake. So the lot specifically is special in that it's really not very wide. It was obviously created well before zoning. We are trying to stay as far away from the lake as possible, and the applicant, I think, has a pretty modest approach to the site, as opposed to maybe demolishing the entire thing and trying to go larger with a footprint for living space. We've worked with them to establish what they will use for living space in the house and then have additional storage space in the garage also.
You got the 5 points, just to be happy to get them into the record.
I didn't know if the board had any questions prior to the 5 criteria.
You're putting the foundation under it. Under the house.
There will be room under the house for storage, but there will also be living space. This house, because of its size, 24 feet wide, 32 feet long, it's not going to have a large amount of area on the second floor for living space. So some of that basement space that's created would be living space also. And I would just point out that if this wasn't used for storage below grade, we would simply be pouring concrete walls and then filling them with dirt to have a slab created. So it seems like a reasonable. The additional construction cost of the bridge pan, it actually might be less money than filling a whole column of fill.
I guess that's only for, so there, it's not living space, it's just storage.
Here?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. No additional living space in the garage. There might be a small office or something. In the Steve has a small office. There might be a small office in the garage that we, if it does have a bathroom, we would plumb into the septic, but no living space. So the first question: special conditions exists such that the literal enforcement of the ordinances will result in unnecessary hardship. The law is special in that it was created prior to the zoning ordinance. Due to this, there's little space to place a new septic system, create usable space in the lot, and the topographic break on the site creates a hardship to the applicants in that the sliding the structure towards the lake only generates a situation where the proposed structure would tower over the existing home with a shorter breadth. So as this structure slides back, its elevation really can't change based on entering the first floor of the garage. And so you'd be taking this column, basically, instead of fitting it in with the landscape, you're pushing it back and creating this towering effect over the rest of the lot and probably the abutting landowners, which isn't an effect that we have. And then between the existing requirements and the topography of the lot, the denial of the variance would pose an unnecessary hardship to the applicants, whereas there is no other option to create reasonable usable space without basically demolishing the existing house and starting anew. The spirit of the ordinance is to create the uniformity and the rural nature of the town, given the nature of the roadway, and the fact that there are other garages that have been built along the roadway in the same format, likely for the same reasons as stated above. It is our opinion that the spirit of the ordinance has been met. Every effort has been made to keep the structure far enough from the road to ensure that there's no maintenance issues in the future with cars being parked in front of the garage doors. We've ensured that there's at least 18 feet there so that the spirit of the ordinance, with that respect, has been met. Granting the variance would not result in a diminution of the surrounding property values. We have an applicant here that is willing to invest money in a lot that is substandard and is older in its generation. And I think that any type of redevelopment that you see both on the site with respect to the existing house and new development raises property values. I think that's pretty well documented throughout history. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. Granting the variance would do substantial justice because it will allow the applicants to reasonably develop the lot with the use that's allowed in the underlying zone. This is a residential use in a residential zone, so we're not asking for an unreasonable use. And with the other uses along the roadway, this is a congruent use. And so we feel that substantial justice has been done. Additionally, one of the tests for substantial justice is that the gain to the applicant does not outweigh the detriment to the zoning ordinance. And in this case, we don't feel that that's the case, given the fact that we're not asking for a variance simply out of convenience. We're asking for a variance because of the necessity of the lot. So there's no diminution in the actual ordinance itself. Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest because it will allow for residential use within a residential zone and is congruent to the surrounding roadway system. Given the special circumstances of the parcel granting the variance will not erode the public interest and the interest the public has within the zoning ordinance itself. And then with respect to the 30-foot sideline setbacks, again, I would just point out that one of the special conditions of the property is that there's only 75 feet in width, and that width starts to taper as soon as we start leaving the street. And so there's zero setback when you apply the 30-foot offsets to the boundary line. And so it's really a balancing act of where that structure should be most appropriately placed if the applicant is required to have a variance. And so the special conditions of the parcel necessitate an unnecessary hardship. The lot has special conditions which make it make compliance with the ordinance not practical and impossible. This lot is non-conforming lot. It was created prior to the ordinance. That happens to be substandard and, as I've described, is oddly shaped. Due to the special conditions, the sideline setback cannot be met, and a little enforcement of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship, whereas it would basically disallow any construction of any kind, shed, doghouse, patio if it needs to meet zoning, any development of that within the sideline setback. Granting the variance would constitute, would be consistent with the ordinance. The spirit of the ordinance is, again, to create uniformity within neighborhoods and along subdivision roads, as well as existing infrastructure. I think the board, many of you have been on the board long enough to know that stated road is special in that it really is non-compliant in many, many ways. And so we're not asking to be really any more non-compliant than any of our neighbors with that respect. And so with the respect of the project's consistency with the neighborhood, we feel that we are consistent with the ordinance. Granting the variance would not result in diminution of surrounding property values. Same answer as above. Any type of new construction that is not obtrusive or offensive. We've tried to design this to be neither of those things. Will only increase property values in the area and not decrease them. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. By granting the variance, here again, the question of substantial justice is whether or not the gain to the applicant outweighs or far outweighs any diminution that you have to the underlying ordinance. And based on the fact that there are so many other pieces of property in this area that are likely in a very similar situation, we don't feel that there's any diminution to the structure of the ordinance itself. And then granting the variance would not be contrary to public interest because, again, this is a residential use, a residential zone, and is as centered on the lot as possible. Doesn't favor one side or another too aggressively, and allows for appropriate use on the center of the lot. And therefore, the special circumstances of the parcel, granting the variance will not erode the public interest of the zone.
The house on the bottom of the screen,
Yes, sir.
is that an actual representation of size?
Yes.
Is that a house and a garage? Well,
Yes, I believe so.
the garage is connected up with the surface.
But as you can see topographically, that's pulled much further forward.
Anybody here to speak in favor? Anybody in opposition? Good. All right, hearing none, we'll discuss. Thank you. Comments? Nope. Nope. Yeah, I mean, if you slide it forward, it's just gonna get narrower and closer to the lake, so. Slow and septic. Yeah, great. All right. The motion. Motion consent. Motion that second. Carol, how do you vote?
Aye.
Dave? And I vote aye.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Good work. This is good.
Yeah, you did a good job. The wrong one.
Yeah.
Okay, any comments on the minutes?
Motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
Cheryl, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Thank you, adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
Second, Dave?
Aye.
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 Seconded. Right?
No. I don't
Good,
think.
Ray.
Yeah,
Okay.
seconded.
That's Jerry, okay?
I'm gonna say what, Ray? And we had what, Dave Sherrill?
Yeah.